Welcome to Valor Conversations. I'm your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And now, on with the show. Hello, friends. We are starting a new series for Valor Conversations called Brigade Tune-Up, gearing our units up for the new ministry year coming up this fall. There are, of course, many resources and things that are available that many leaders are not aware of. Well, we want to share these resources with you. We don't want this to be a quote-unquote how-to guide. We want others to share their own experiences using the resources that have been available to them, other leaders speaking their minds and being able to give back to the entire brigade community. Today, we are going to discuss the year-round schedule and calendar, along with the value of planning ahead. Joining me today for Valor Conversations, representing Unit 2733, is Coit Morrison and David Taylor Jr. These guys have a great history with Brigade and the call to discipleship with regard to their unit. Guys, welcome aboard. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for having us, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, this is awesome. So let's start off with this question for our conversation today. How did you both get involved with Brigade in the first place? What was your first connection? What was the first connection like for you? I love to explore context before we get into the subject matter of what we're talking about. Coit, why don't you get us started?
Well, back in 1978, I was looking to help out again with another Boy Scout troop as a senior leader. And I had just gotten saved, and someone told me I should check out Christian Service Brigade, which I did. And I was in that unit for about a year and a half when the captain said, okay, the reins are now yours. And so from that point on, I have been captain of a unit. That one, I went off to college and started a unit there, and then moved into Rock Hill and started the unit that I am currently in. That was back in '88.
How about you, David?
So 1998, I was a seventh grader, and we had just moved from Charleston, West Virginia to Rock Hill. And we were at some sort of fellowship gathering. I don't remember what the event was. But Coit was there, and some of the other brigade guys were there. I had grown up in Awana, and they had asked me if I was going to be coming to Christian Service Brigade. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What is Christian Service Brigade? So they started talking to me about it, about what it was and what they did. And they had me talk to Coit, and the rest is history. I've been involved ever since.
Awesome. Now, before we get into the calendar, the planning stuff, the main element of what we're talking about for today's episode, you both have obviously been involved with planning and involved with Brigade for a while. Coit, you mentioned you got involved in 1978. P.S. That's the year I was born, just for the sake of discussion here. Now, everybody that's listening is going to know my age accordingly. But anyway, what have been some of the learning curve elements that you've had to go through leading your specific unit down in South Carolina? What were the growing pains like? Coit, why don't you get us started with that?
Wow, I guess our first major growing pain, and that took quite a while, and it even up to the time that Dave went in there, our church had a Christian school, and the vast majority of our guys were from the Christian school. So I really struggled for years to break out of that so we can get some non-church people in there. And that was probably the first real struggle that we had. And we eventually did. Now we've only got one person from or two people from our church, and the rest of them are not from our church. So
Wow. How about you, David? What have been some of the growing pains like for you?
I'm not really sure I'd call it growing pains necessarily, more of just transitional issues. First of all, going from brigadier to senior leader, that was definitely an adjustment period, and seeing the world of brigade from a different dynamic. But then also now back in 2018, my wife and I moved from Rock Hill to Kentucky. So while I'm still very active in the unit in the ongoing operations, I'm doing it from almost 400 miles away. So that's been a real huge learning curve. Figuring out which technologies work best for us to do that and how to best interact with the guys remotely has been a huge challenge.
So you learn trial and error, and I'm sure that has come into play with regard to the planning of things. Let's talk about scheduling. All right. What's your timeline? What's the framework for you guys for planning things out in advance? I'm assuming here we are beginning summer of 2022, and I'm going to guess that you probably have next year's calendar already done. Am I right with that?
No, we're in the midst. We just finished this year. We have been in discussion with the squads as about some of the possible content this coming year. All during the summer, we have summer LTMs every other week, and we have already been in discussion. We collaborate using Microsoft Teams, and so that helps out in many different facets. So when we finally do meet with the leadership team meetings in person, we've already done a lot of groundwork. So no, we don't have the year planned, but we will have it all planned out before we start officially in September of this year.
Yeah, the next ministry year, but the same calendar year, of course. So what are some of your own specific roles in the development and the carrying out of the calendar or schedule? Coit, let's start with you, and then David. I know David, your dynamic is different because of the distance factor,
right,
but would love to hear from you with regard to that too. So Coit, why don't you get us started? Again, your specific role in the development and the carrying out of the calendar or schedule for your unit.
Well, I was thinking about that, obviously thinking about this interview, and I think two major parts of getting a calendar well done is commitment. You have to be committed to making it happen, to sticking with it. So probably one of my biggest roles is to make sure that we don't get tied down and that we actually accomplish it. And number two is collaboration or communication. And so, I could sit down and I could, as many years as I've done this, I could come up with a plan. But if you want to have your junior leaders have ownership in what's going on, which you do, then you need to make sure you collaborate.
Awesome. Thank you. Good words of wisdom right there. Communication, collaboration, that certainly does need to come into play. David, how about you?
I'm heavily involved in what they do during squad time. We developed a system a few years back on how to prepare squad lessons, and we have a pretty hefty regimen of each Bible study topic that we're going to do for the year. We have 14 topics and passages each year, and they spend 2 to 3 weeks studying each passage and coming up with lesson plans. So my job is to make sure that they're on time with those, that they're doing those accurately and faithfully to the text, and making sure that they're coming up with lesson plans that are engaging. And as far as the rest of the calendar, I'm not as heavily involved because I'm not there, but I do help with having that unique perspective of having been a non-com before, but also now a senior leader. I talk to the guys, they ask me all the time about, well, why can't we do this? And I can see their point of view as a non-com, but I can then give them the logistics point of view as a senior leader and kind of mesh those two viewpoints together. But that's usually my involvement as far as calendar goes.
Awesome. Now let's talk about the special events that you guys do, right? You have the weekly events, you have the regular events that take place for your unit, but what are the special events that you guys are involved with that you put on the calendar every year? These traditional activities that highlight the calendar every year. What are those events, and do you have purpose behind doing those events? Coit, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, our calendar is not just on events. Our calendar is planning everything down to what are you going to do in squad meeting, what game are you going to play on this day. So we do that, the big picture, but some of our traditional things that we've done that we continue to do, we have a pinnacle run, that there's a 700-foot mountain in the area here, and we've done this since, I guess, 98. And we start out at the parking lot and we race up to the top, and we keep their scores and how they improve and all. We have a Christmas party and gift exchange. We do a monthly trip for the battalion year, but in February we have a leadership trip, and that's during President's Day weekend. And it just makes it just kind of a special thing for just the leadership team. And we do some pretty interesting things at that time. We go to Camporama up in West Virginia every year.
You guys make that trip. That's awesome.
We make the trip. Yep. We have a senior farewell dinner that we invite all the seniors that graduate and all of the leadership team, and we usually roast them and all. And if there's no senior graduating that year, we still meet anyway, and just for end of year party. We have an invitational trip that we invite. All trips, dads are always invited, but moms and sisters are never invited except at the invitational trip. In fact, the whole church is invited. So obviously we give them a flavor of the battalion trip, but we don't. It's not a backpacking trip. And then we have our non-com retreat that we'll have that at the end of August, and we've already done all the planning. We know what we're doing. So it's just a time to get away together to just fellowship and review, but just to start the year together. And those are some of the special traditions that we have.
David, how many times have you gone up that mountain?
Oh, well, at least 6 times when I was in Brigade. And then up until I moved to Kentucky, usually I would actually go up the mountain ahead of the guys and wait up top with a ham radio. And Coit would, we'd kind of coordinate back and forth and record times up the top. So I've been up it a few times.
Awesome. So your planning, it has purpose, right? There has to be intentionality that is involved with this. Talk about how your planning also assists and helps with the collaboration of the church as a whole, your local church as a whole.
Okay, well, first thing what we do is we create a couple of charts, or we have some charts that are created already, but we start our planning with what we call the year at a glance. And it will have all the council rings and what days the meetings and all. And we basically figure out what are the meeting days. We miss the Christmas week, and we miss Thanksgiving week, but we have all the other weeks. Now, some weeks we traditionally found out that New Year's week is not a good week to plan heavy duty, but so we make that like a game night. But we plan everything out, then we start saying, how are we going to fill it out? So we may decide we're going to do 4 activity patches in a year. Well, how do we decide that? We have a chart that we keep up with, and every year we add on to it, and it's all of the activity patches that we've done. And so we can see when's the last time we did rockets or cool chemistry or wilderness survival or anything. And so we'll sit and we'll talk about what are the 4 patches we're going to do this year, or are we going to create a patch? Well, if the guys come up with a good idea, we'll find a man in the church or somewhere in the community that could teach that. But we try to also, we make sure that one of our patches is a Christian-centered patch, and all the other ones are fun or skill. And then we look at once we fill that out, then we back up and we look at everything, the games. Are we playing all just guy games? Are we playing some strategy games? Are we playing games that just the older guys like to play with the younger? So we look at everything through different filters. We look at things as to Dave works out the Bible curriculum. So we're not tying that in with the activity patches, but from year to year, we're making sure we're covering a broad spectrum of the gospel and of the Old and New Testament. So we can step back as we're filling this out. We step back and try to look through many different lenses, service and worship and all that, and we can then adjust accordingly.
Awesome. David, talk about the Bible end of things. If you are the one that's in charge of that, putting that together for the schedule for the year, and executing that. And again, it's collaborative. I understand that. How do you make sure that it lines up maybe with what the church is doing and developing, not event driven, but even spiritually with how the church is planning out their ministry year accordingly?
We don't really have that kind of coordination as far as
Okay.
what the church is doing. What we do, we've got a database of topics. It could be purity, it could be any one of the 7 points of valor, it could be salvation itself. And we look through those topics and we assign a topic to a week. We got weeks 1 through 14 total squad lessons throughout the year. And then we look for passages that go along with those topics. And we've already got our 14 topics and passages set for this year. And they will start those during the summer.
Wow.
2 weeks of study. They'll do the first 2 weeks, the whole inductive, your observations, your interpretations, and then 1 week of, figuring out what their lesson's going to be, making that application and getting it ready for the years, to where they are finished with these squad lessons well in advance of the actual day they are going to actually have to teach this, to where they should be able to just do a review the week they're teaching that, and be ready to go.
Awesome. What other resources do you guys utilize that you haven't covered thus far, or shared this far with our audience? What other resources do you use in your planning and your coordination and collaboration? Coit, let's start with you.
Well, to answer your other question about trying to coordinate with the church, traditionally,
yes, please.
Well, traditionally, we have made the effort to do that, and our church wasn't organized enough.
Okay.
To do that. Now, we have just recently merged, and we have a really, that may come, and we can easily fit into that, but we have traditionally always been the ones that did the planning well in advance, and I'm hoping for things to change around a little bit more there. Probably one of a couple of the tools or the modes that we end up planning with are, well, LTM, which is the obvious one. But LTM is really the time where you're pulling things together. If you have LTM and you're brainstorming, you've wasted most of your time. So one of the tools, and Dave uses this with his Bible lessons. We use it for everything having to do with leadership, and that's Microsoft Teams. We've got a check-in that we do once a week, and if nothing else, they need to check in at least to see what the topics are and make comments on it, and then anything that comes up, whether it's a trip or, hey, now we're talking about activity patches, or Dave was talking about what are some of the Bible lessons that we should cover, we'll have a post in there, and they're supposed to collaborate, go back and forth, make recommendations, ask questions. So we have got a lot of the groundwork already done when we finally do get together with at LTM. And then probably the other thing that we do is after each meeting, we have a huddle, which is over Microsoft Teams as well. It's like Zoom chat, but Teams has a chat room. And so anything that happened during the meeting that we need to discuss at a later time, we don't use the huddles for discussing anything per se, but just raising issues and how are things going. So here again, it's the thing that really makes things flow and that you're planning correctly is you need to communicate and collaborate very well if you want to get ownership from everyone in the group.
Awesome. Dave, any other resources that you can think of that haven't been covered either by Coit or haven't been discussed thus far?
I mean, really, the only other thing that we use is Google Calendar. Um,
Mm,
that we then have integrated that into Microsoft Teams as well, so you can see it all right there.
that's
Uh,
fantastic.
but like each of the non-coms has their own Google Calendar that Coit has set up. So if they're going to be away, they need to put that on their calendar. We can see who's available when,
Mm.
and it just really helps to be able to see when everybody's available, when everybody has something going on, and what the events are and when.
Yeah,
And what's, go ahead, Coit. Yeah.
on those calendars, we have a calendar that the brigadiers see, the parents of church see, and that's basically the trips, the meetings, the senior leader meetings, and the LTMs. And
Mm.
everything else having to do with lesson 1A is due here, lesson 1B is due here. These are all the background stuff that we do with the guys. I meet with each of the corporals about their achievement. We put down on the calendar when they're supposed to meet. And so those are the behind the scene things. And that's what the leadership team sees. And it's been helpful, obviously. That's the whole reason to do everything is these calendars. So
That's awesome. Just a couple more questions and thoughts for you guys. And this is a question that I didn't send to you ahead of time. And it's something I just learned as Coit, you were sharing this. Your church going through a merger, that's so much different than what a lot of churches are dealing with. A lot of churches are dealing with a separation or schism, but still, it presents another unique dynamic. It presents another layer. How has that contextually worked for you guys in your planning? And the virtual thing with David being 400 miles away, that also presents another layer. How do you address those? I won't call them obstacles, but how do you address those opportunities?
well, I'll let Dave answer the one, second
Okay.
number one, I would say this merger has been very untypical, or whatever the word is for that.
Different, right?
It's been a miracle. And it's been kind of interesting. We actually merged with a schism that split off from Trinity.
Wow.
About
Okay.
20, I guess maybe 30 years ago or something.
Wow.
This merger was a win-win. We were the old congregation with lots of land and debt-free, and the other one is more of a younger one, but it has been remarkable. It has been awesome. And we're still learning. I mean, we're still learning how, and I'm hopeful. I think we probably can see more collaboration with, I think the elders there. It's been wonderful. Dave.
Awesome. David, talk about the virtual dynamic.
Yeah, the virtual dynamic, it's been interesting, but we've been doing it so long now that it's just kind of second nature. And especially we do a lot of our meetings like on Wednesday night after huddles. Those are all of us are remote anyway for that. So it's just another layer to it. The real challenge of it is time zone difference, where I'm 1 hour behind them. In fact, I just had my schedule change at work, to where I'm not off until 7 o'clock Eastern time each night. So
Wow.
we literally just had to ask everybody, hey, can we move LTM back an hour so Dave can join us through the summer? So just little quirks like that. But it's really become, just second nature, being remote. And it's really interesting too, where we do the Teams interactions, we're available more than just the times that we're meeting. So I'm meeting with guys at different times than during the brigade meeting or during the LTM. I meet with them, during the week whenever we get a chance on the weekends. And it's just been a really, really seamless thing. And I don't really think we really notice the remote feel of it anymore, other than I'm just not physically in the room.
That's awesome. So as we begin to wrap up, another major set of questions for you guys that I want you to consider. For those leaders that might be struggling with developing their calendar, their schedule, their intentionality, maybe they're just getting started with a brand new unit, or maybe they just haven't had the support. What advice might you give to some of these other brigade leaders that might listen or potentially watch, not us, but watch the audio version of this over YouTube? And what time period specifically do you think is a healthy time to have a developed calendar for the next season or the next ministry year, so to speak? Coit, why don't you get us started with that?
Well, I believe that it's very important to have the full year planned before you start for several reasons. Really, it enables you to focus on ministry and not logistics. Also, it's easier to make a change. Something might come up and you want to do something else. Well, what are you going to take out and substitute? But a lot of groups, what they do is every week, what are we going to do this week? What are we going to do this week? And so it just it's not as purposeful. And then it really ultimately, when people see what you're doing, it builds trust with the church and really with the parents. What I would suggest to do is, and different people work different ways, but I don't care who you are. It's helpful if you can write maybe in a chart, make drawing pictures or whatever, come up with a big overall plan. We're going to do, hey, we're going to have 35 meetings this year, and try to fill things out tentatively and then have discussion. And as you're putting these things down, you're going to realize, hey, there's more things that we possibly could do or want to do that we can't do. So then you start deciding on the best. And if you write it on down, then you can always come back. Once you have this overview, you come back and work on the details and start adding flesh to it. What game are you going to play? And I would even say that's important. Choose the game. What will happen is you just tend to play the same games, or there's certain games that you won't play that the younger guys like to play. Like for us, it's Pony Express. We will play Pony Express once in the year because the young guys like it, and the older guys hate it, but they love the younger guys, so they're going to play it. But unless you plan that, it's not going to be it's not going to happen. So write down the big picture and then work on the details.
Awesome. David, any other thoughts that you might have as it pertains to advice for a brigade leader that might be struggling with developing their calendar or schedule or purpose behind it?
No, it's like Coit said, get the big picture in, mid to late July, ideally. And then, you can bang out details and not have to worry about what are we going to do, just worry about how are we going to do it at that point. Because, if you already know what you're doing in May, back in July, well, then you've got plenty of time to plan that event out without having to worry about, are we going to go here? Are we going to go there? What do we need to plan? You just need to get the logistics worked out.
Awesome. Well, any other inspirational words or thoughts that you guys have as it pertains to unit tune-up, brigade tune-up, or calendar schedule development? Coit, any final words, any final thoughts?
Well, I would encourage you to consider Microsoft Teams. Number one, it's free. If you get it set up, you don't have to use all the features. If you just have the chat room and a basic post, you can always, our Dave and I, how long it's been, this is our third year, maybe, or fourth, I don't know. But
wow,
when we first started doing it, it was like pulling teeth to get them to do it. Now it's second nature to everyone, and it's been very helpful. And because it is free and you can have up to 300 users on it,
wow,
it's a powerful tool. It's a it's very useful in collaboration if you just get through the growing pains. I guess that was mentioning growing pains, that was probably a real big growing pain for us using it.
It saves on gas too. Right? Well, you're actually saving money.
You still need to get together in person.
Oh yeah.
But this just makes it very well. The other thing is, and Dave alluded to this, but it might be one corporal ends up getting on at 3 o'clock in the morning while Dave and I are asleep, they don't have to talk to us. They can still respond to the post. They can ask questions. And then, as you know, if everyone checks in and looks at it every day and all, it's a ongoing conversation, even if it's not in a video chat. But then we've got video chat groups too that we can do. So
it can be very asynchronous or synchronous, in real time or not.
Both,
which makes sense. Yeah. David, any final thoughts? Any final inspirational words or anything you'd like to share as we wrap up?
No, I would actually echo what Coit says. Get Microsoft Teams because it's free. Plus, you get the Microsoft Office tools, so you can make presentations, do your Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and you get a terabyte of storage. So it's great.
Wow.
So we put all sorts of stuff on there just because we've got the space to do it. But I would also say another benefit of it, we use it even for like virtual game nights too. We play games online all the time, and we all have our little voice interactions there, the whole group in there. So yeah, it's just a great tool, and it's just fun. Plus you get that people interaction, and everybody has a phone. So, put it on your smartphone, put it on your computer, tablet, whatever you have. So
I should be contacting Microsoft for some sponsorship money for this podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
With the commercial that's happening here. But MS Teams, yeah, I love hearing about what the different resources like MS Teams, Microsoft Teams is available to us as ministry leaders. Well, Coit and David, I want to thank you both for being part of Valor Conversations and your willingness to talk about this particular topic about scheduling and calendar development for Brigade Tune-Up, the series that we're currently in. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks for tuning into Valor Conversations with your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more Valor Conversations coming your way soon.